When Iran attempted to close the Strait of Hormuz, what happened next caught Tehran completely off guard. 11 armed speedboats raced toward a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, closing in at 50 knots, missiles, torpedoes, and suicide bombs on board. At one point, just 50 meters separated the world from a global oil catastrophe. But the American admiral on that bridge never gave the order to fire. Instead, she activated something Iran had never encountered before. Within minutes, all 11 attack boats were dead in the water, drifting, helpless, and humiliated. So what exactly did the U.S. Navy unleash that day? The Strait of Hormuz is not just a body of water, it is the single most critical oil passage on the planet. Every day, roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply moves through this narrow stretch of sea between Iran and Oman. Any disruption to that flow sends fuel prices spiking within hours, economies shake, stock markets panic. It is that important. And on this particular day, the tension in that narrow waterway was about to reach a breaking point. The USS Nimitz, one of the most powerful warships ever built, was leading its carrier strike group through the strait, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier over 1,000 feet long, 90 fighter jets on its deck, 5,000 sailors on board, flanked by guided missile destroyers, cruisers, and support ships, a floating fortress conducting a routine transit through international waters, something the U.S. Navy had done hundreds of times before. But this time was different. Just 24 hours earlier, Iran's supreme leader had gone on state television and delivered a declaration that sent shockwaves through global capitals. His message was blunt. If America continues blocking Iran from exporting its oil, then no country will export oil through the Persian Gulf. That was not a suggestion. That was a threat. And the entire world heard it. For weeks, the pressure had been building. American sanctions were crushing Iran's oil exports. The Iranian economy was suffering. Tehran was desperate, frustrated, and looking for a way to push back. And now the Nimitz, the very symbol of American military power, was sailing directly through what Iran considered its own waters. Iranian military command in Tehran saw this as an opportunity, not to start a war. They were not foolish enough for that, but to send a message, to intimidate, to force the Americans into a reaction that would make Iran look strong and America look like the aggressor. At 2 in the afternoon, 11 speedboats launched from Bandar Abbas Naval Base on the Iranian coast. These were not ordinary patrol boats. These were Boghammer-class fast attack craft, roughly 40 feet long, capable of speeds over 50 knots, armed with rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, and anti-ship missiles, small, fast, and deadly. Their mission was a swarm attack, a tactic Iran had practiced for years. The concept is simple but dangerous. Send multiple small boats at high speed toward a much larger warship from different directions simultaneously, overwhelm its defenses, get close, create chaos, and force the enemy into a mistake. Iran had reason to believe this could work. It had worked before. In 2008, Iranian speedboats harassed American warships in this very waterway. In 2016, Iranian forces captured American sailors and paraded them on television. In 2021, they seized merchant vessels passing through the Gulf. Each time, Iran had pushed the boundary a little further. But they had never, not once, attempted to swarm an entire carrier battle group. At 3:15 p.m., radar operators aboard the Nimitz detected the speedboats leaving the Iranian coast. By 3:28, the boats were 20 miles out and closing fast. By 3:35, they were just 10 miles away, moving in a clear attack formation, spreading out to approach the strike group from multiple angles at once. Admiral Sarah Coleman, commander of the Nimitz strike group, was called to the bridge immediately. Her officers delivered the situation report. 11 Iranian fast attack craft, high-speed approach, no response to repeated radio warnings, distance closing rapidly. Every officer on that bridge knew what was at stake. One wrong move, one nervous decision, one miscalculation from either side, and the world's most critical oil choke point would become a war zone. Global oil supply disrupted overnight. The world economy in free fall. Two nations locked in a conflict with consequences no one could predict. Every person on that bridge was waiting for one word from Admiral Coleman: fire. That is what military protocol suggested. That is what her weapons officers recommended. 11 hostile vessels, armed and aggressive, closing on a nuclear aircraft carrier. Standard rules of engagement allowed a defensive response. No one would have questioned it. No international body would have condemned it. The threat was real, visible, and recorded on radar. But Admiral Coleman was not thinking like a conventional commander. She was thinking 3 steps ahead. She understood something that most military leaders overlook in the heat of the moment. In the modern world, how a battle is perceived matters just as much as how it is fought. Firing on those speedboats would have solved the immediate problem, but created a far bigger one. Iran wanted a reaction. Tehran needed footage of American warships opening fire on small Iranian boats. That footage would have traveled across the globe within minutes. Iranian state media would have called it an unprovoked attack. Headlines worldwide would have read, "America fires on Iranian vessels in Persian Gulf." The United Nations would have debated. Allies would have distanced themselves, and Iran, despite being the aggressor, would have played the victim perfectly. Admiral Coleman refused to give them that gift. Instead, she gave 3 orders, calm, precise, and calculated, each one designed not to destroy the enemy, but to dismantle them without leaving a single scratch. The first order: launch the helicopters. Within 90 seconds, 4 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters lifted off from the Nimitz flight deck. These were not attack helicopters. They carried no missiles, no rockets, no heavy guns. They were search and rescue aircraft, but each one was equipped with something far more powerful in this situation: high-definition cameras and forward-looking infrared recording systems. Those 4 helicopters positioned themselves directly above the 11 Iranian speedboats, hovering, watching, recording every movement from every possible angle. The Iranian boat crews looked up and saw the helicopters circling. They assumed it was surveillance. They had no idea it was the first phase of their own humiliation. The second order: reposition the destroyers. 2 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, the USS Stockdale and the USS Chaffee, began a slow, deliberate maneuver. They did not charge toward the Iranian boats. They did not aim their weapons. They simply shifted position, moving into flanking angles on either side of the speedboat formation. It was seamless. It was quiet. And by the time the maneuver was complete, the entire tactical picture had reversed. The Iranian boats had entered the area believing they were surrounding the American carrier, but now, without even realizing it, they were the ones who were surrounded. The destroyers formed a box around them. The helicopters watched from above, and the Nimitz sat in the center, untouched and unbothered. The Iranian commander on the lead boat did not notice. He was too focused on his radio exchange with the carrier. He had just demanded that the Nimitz turn around and leave what he called Iranian waters. When Admiral Coleman calmly informed him that the strike group was conducting lawful transit through international waters, the Iranian commander laughed. He actually laughed over an open radio frequencies and mocked her response. He believed he was winning. He had no idea what was coming next. The third order: activate the directed energy system. Deep within the Nimitz, a system powered up that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard had never encountered before: the AN-SEQ-3 laser weapon system. This was not a bullet, not a bomb, not a missile. It was focused light, directed energy, capable of reaching targets at the speed of light with absolute precision. Against small boats at close range, this weapon could disable electronic navigation systems in seconds, blind optical sensors and cameras, scramble radio frequencies, and jam GPS signals. In extreme cases, it could even ignite fuel tanks. And the most terrifying part, it made no sound, no flash, no explosion, no warning. The target simply stopped working, and the crew had no idea why. At 3:47 p.m., the laser system locked onto the lead Iranian speedboat. The operator activated it. Within moments, something strange began happening aboard that boat. The GPS screen flickered and went dark. The radar display froze, then died. Radio communications dissolved into static. The navigation compass spun uselessly. One by one, every electronic system aboard that speedboat shut down, silently, invisibly, completely. Then the same thing happened to the second boat, and the third, and the fourth. All 11 speedboats and the pride of the Revolutionary Guard Navy were suddenly floating dead in the middle of the most heavily trafficked waterway on Earth. No navigation, no communication, no coordination, no way home. The Iranian commander's voice came over the radio one final time, but this time there was no laughter, no mockery, no confidence, just raw, undisguised panic. "What did you do? What did you do to our systems?" Admiral Coleman's reply was calm, measured, and devastating. She did not raise her voice. She did not gloat. She did not threaten. She simply picked up the radio and spoke with the kind of calm that only comes from absolute control of a situation. "Iranian commanders," she began, "you are currently drifting in active international shipping lanes. Multiple oil tankers are approaching your position. Without functioning navigation, your vessels are at serious risk of collision. We are prepared to offer search and rescue assistance if required." Let that sink in for a moment. 11 armed attack boats had launched from Bandar Abbas with one mission: to intimidate the most powerful navy on Earth. And now those same boats were floating helplessly in open water, unable to steer, unable to communicate, unable to do anything except drift and wait for the very people they had just threatened to come and rescue them. But Admiral Coleman was not finished. She picked up the radio one more time and delivered the words that would haunt Tehran for months. "Iranian commander, I should also inform you that everything that has occurred in the last several minutes has been recorded in high-definition video from multiple angles. Your approach, your threats, your aggressive maneuvering, and your current situation, all of it captured. This footage will be shared with international media within the hour." Yet silence on the radio, complete silence. Because in that moment, the Iranian commander understood something terrible. This was no longer a military confrontation. It had become something far worse. It had become a public humiliation, and it was about to be broadcast to the entire world. Admiral Coleman then offered two choices. Option 1, American vessels would tow all 11 Iranian boats back to Iranian waters. The Revolutionary Guard would then have to explain to their superiors in Tehran how they needed the United States Navy to drag them home like broken-down fishing boats. Option 2, the Nimitz would restore their navigation systems. The boats would return to port under their own power, but they would never again approach American warships at such close range. 10 seconds of silence passed on that radio channel, 10 long seconds. Then the Iranian commander replied with just 2 words, Option 2. At 3:53 p.m., the laser system was deactivated. One by one, Iranian navigation systems rebooted. GPS signals returned, radar screens flickered back to life, radio communications cleared. At 3:55, all 11 speedboats turned around and headed back toward the Iranian coast in complete silence. No more threats, no more radio taunts, no more bravado, just 11 boats limping home. By 3:59, the USS Nimitz and its entire strike group continued their transit through the Strait of Hormuz as if nothing had happened. Calm, professional, untouched. But the real earthquake was only just beginning. Within 2 hours, United States Central Command released the full, unedited video footage to every major news network on the planet. The footage showed everything. The Iranian boats racing toward the carrier, the aggressive radio threats, the dangerously close passes, and then the moment their systems failed. The confusion, the panic, the drifting, the silence. Global media erupted, headlines spread across every continent, networks ran the footage on repeat, analysts dissected every second. The verdict was unanimous. Iran had attempted to bully the United States Navy in international waters and had been embarrassed in front of the entire world. Iranian state television tried desperately to rewrite the story. They claimed their boats had successfully confronted American aggression. They called it a victory for the Revolutionary Guard. But the video did not lie. The world could see with its own eyes what had actually happened. No amount of propaganda could undo that damage. The economic impact was immediate. Global oil markets, which had been nervous for weeks about a possible closure of the Strait of Hormuz, suddenly calmed. Oil prices dropped. Traders and analysts reached the same conclusion. Iran cannot close this waterway. The threat Tehran had held over the global economy for decades was exposed as hollow. Saudi Arabia responded within days by increasing oil exports. The UAE announced expanded production capacity. Even Iraq, Iran's own neighbor, felt confident enough to boost its output. The message from the region was clear. The strait is open, it will stay open, and Iran cannot change that. But the most devastating consequences played out inside Iran itself. The Revolutionary Guard commander who had ordered the speedboat operation was removed from his position. The boat crews faced disciplinary action. Internal investigations were launched at the highest levels. Hardline military figures who had pushed for direct confrontation with America found themselves suddenly sidelined. Pragmatic voices within the Iranian government, those who had always argued that provoking the United States was a losing strategy, gained significant influence because this incident proved what many inside Iran's own military had long suspected but never dared say openly. Direct confrontation with the United States Navy is not just risky, it is pointless. Not because America would sink their ships, and although it certainly could, but because America possessed the technology and the discipline to defeat them without firing a single weapon. And that reality was far more terrifying than any missile. Within weeks, Iranian naval harassment in the Persian Gulf dropped by 80%. Revolutionary Guard patrol boats kept their distance from American warships. The provocations that had been a regular feature of life in the Strait for years simply stopped. So what really happened that afternoon in the Strait of Hormuz? On the surface, it looked like a simple harassment incident, 11 small boats against one massive carrier battle group, a confrontation that lasted barely 17 minutes. No shots fired, no casualties, no explosions. But beneath the surface, something far more significant took place. The world witnessed a live demonstration of what 21st century naval warfare actually looks like, and it looks nothing like what most people imagine. For decades, nations have measured military power by the size of their armies, the number of their tanks, the range of their missiles, but this incident rewrote that equation entirely. The United States Navy did not defeat Iran with brute force that day. It defeated Iran with precision, technology, and intelligence, a combination that left Tehran with no response, no excuse, and no way to save face. The weapon at the center of this story, the directed energy laser system, is not science fiction. It is not a prototype sitting in some laboratory. It is real, deployed, and fully operational aboard American warships right now. It uses focused light energy to disable targets with pinpoint accuracy, no ammunition required, no expensive missiles launched, just silent, invisible energy that reaches its target at the speed of light. Against small, fast-moving boats, this system is devastating. It can shut down navigation equipment in seconds, blind cameras and optical sensors, scramble communications, and jam GPS signals. And in extreme situations, it can even ignite fuel systems. The crew on the receiving end does not hear anything, they do not see anything, their equipment simply stops functioning, and they have absolutely no idea why. But the laser was only one part of what made this incident so remarkable. The real brilliance was the strategy behind it. Admiral Coleman understood something that separates great military leaders from ordinary ones. In a world where every smartphone is a camera and every incident becomes global news within minutes, the way a confrontation is handled matters just as much as the outcome. Winning a battle while losing the narrative is not really winning at all. If American warships had opened fire on those speedboats, even in clear self-defense, the story would have changed completely. Iran would have played the victim. International media would have debated whether the response was proportionate. The United Nations would have called emergency sessions. American allies would have faced pressure to distance themselves. And Iran, despite starting the confrontation, would have gained sympathy and leverage on the world stage. Admiral Coleman took all of that away from them by letting the Iranians threaten, harass, and approach while recording everything from multiple angles. She built an airtight case that the whole world could see. Iran was the aggressor. America was the professional. There was no debate. There was no ambiguity, just clear, undeniable footage that told the complete story. This is what modern military strategists call information warfare combined with kinetic capability, the ability to win the battle and the narrative at the same time. And it sent a powerful message to every nation watching. China took notice. Beijing has been expanding its naval presence in the South China Sea for years, using similar intimidation tactics, swarming smaller vessels, making aggressive passes, claiming territorial waters. This incident showed them exactly what American technology can do without escalation. Russia observed carefully. Moscow has used its naval forces to harass NATO ships in the Black Sea and the Baltic. The Strait of Hormuz incident demonstrated that such tactics carry a risk Russia had not fully considered, the risk of being publicly humiliated on the world stage. North Korea watched as well. Pyongyang has long relied on provocative military gestures to gain attention and leverage. But when provocation meets technological superiority of this magnitude, the gesture becomes meaningless. And for Iran, the lesson was the most painful of all. The Strait of Hormuz, the card Tehran had held for decades, the threat that gave them outsized influence over global energy markets, was neutralized in 17 minutes. Not by an invasion, not by a bombing campaign, by 4 helicopters, 2 destroyers, 1 laser system, and an admiral who refused to take the bait. Today, the Strait of Hormuz remains open. Oil tankers pass through every single day. 20% of the world's oil supply flows without interruption. Iranian patrol boats still operate in the Persian Gulf, but they keep their distance now. They watch, they monitor, but they do not harass, they do not threaten, they do not swarm. Because somewhere in the back of every Iranian naval commander's mind there is a memory of 11 boats drifting helplessly in open water, a memory of systems failing without explanation, a memory of helicopters hovering overhead recording every moment of their failure, a memory of an admiral's calm voice offering to tow them home. That memory is more powerful than any missile, more effective than any sanction, more lasting than any treaty. The Strait of Hormuz will not be closed, not today, not tomorrow, not as long as the United States Navy sails those waters with the technology, the discipline, and the strategic brilliance demonstrated on that unforgettable afternoon.